I think it's finally time that we give Lake Placid a watch. But when I was looking for it online, I accidentally typed in Lake Placid. Let me tell you, that's not a movie you want to watch. Everyone remembers seeing Lake Placid back in the day. It really seemed to have left an impression. I was only 12 and I saw it in theaters. I don't remember that much except for it had a big crocodile and Betty White. So it's high time we give Lake Placid a rewatch and see if it still holds up today. First, we meet Sheriff Hank Keogh. Oh, Mad-Eye Moody himself. He plays a pretty good American, although his accent does slip out every once in a while. He kind of reminds me of the skipper. He's working with a no-name fish and wildlife agent who you just know's gonna get it. And after a few false scares and a very Jaws-inspired shot, he does. Becoming half the man he used to be. But Hank didn't see what killed him. Now we jump over to New York City, in a museum where we meet Kelly Scott. She's a paleontologist that seems to know her stuff, so they send her to the lake to help in the investigation. But really, it's just because her ex-boyfriend, who also happens to be her boss, wants some alone time with her best friend. So I guess what better way than to just ship her off to Maine so she can lend a hand. She meets up with Sheriff Hank and he shows her the tooth that was found embedded in the body. She can tell it's reptilian and not a fossil. Her interest is piqued now.
I'd like to see this lake.
They load up and prepare to head to the lake, packing a big punch with the Lightweight Forward Area Air Defense Unit, aka a mini grenade launcher. Before they leave, we meet Jack Wells from Fish and Wildlife and the head of this operation. What he says goes, and he doesn't really want Kelly to tag along. But in the end, she convinces him to let her come and they make their way to the lake, which is 25 miles from any house, except for one old couple who live right on the lake. So that's our first stop. We meet with Miss Dolores Bickerman, played by Betty White. But where's Mr. Bickerman? Well, he's dead.
I killed him.
The lady straight up admitted to the sheriff that she killed her husband, and he just brushes it off? Okay. On their way to camp, they find more evidence that something huge is in the lake, and it can take out Bullwinkle. Once settled in, Hector Cry shows up, a rich mythology professor that has a thing for crocodiles. He also has a history working with Kelly. It's nothing serious, it's just their paths have crossed a few times. Despite Hector being a little eccentric, she knows that he's the real deal, and if he's here, it must mean there's a crocodile nearby. But Maine? Really? They all go out into the water for a bit to see what they can find. And, well, a lot. Something flips the canoe over, Hank and Kelly flying into the water. They manage to get back to camp safe and sound, but what did that? No one even caught a glimpse of it. A little later, they find a toe that's been washed ashore, confirming it even more for Hector that this is a croc. They do throw in a nice little alligator reference here, though.
Is this the man who was killed? He seemed taller.
We got a big toe in the morgue once. Nothing else, just a big toe. Yeah. Never found the rest of them. But we figured out who it was. Had a funeral and everything. It's been a pretty small casket.
At night, nothing significant happens. Hector throws a party and Jack and Kelly start to bond. But in the middle of the night, the sheriff gets up to take a leak, only to get the bejesus scared out of him by Hector, who's out setting traps. A reoccurring gag here is that the sheriff gets getting caught in these traps. In the morning, they're out on the water and once again get attacked. This time, a no-name deputy getting his head bitten clean off. But still, no one actually saw it happen. So we don't know who or what our monster is just yet. But that's all about to change. Because after getting caught in yet another one of Hector's traps, Hank chases after him, only to come face to face with a bear. What? I thought this movie was about a giant crocodile, not a bear. Oh, there, that's better. Well, there's no denying it now. They're dealing with a croc. The next day, despite seeing the giant killer, Hector can't contain himself, and he goes to its home. This is one thing that stuck with me as a kid about this movie, that crocodiles live in these little alcoves, cutouts in the land. Anytime I'm on a lake or a body of water and I see something like this, I always steer clear, just in case. Meanwhile, Kelly and the rest of them are taking plaster casts when they see who's been feeding this thing. Good old innocent Betty White. They confront her about it and her husband's mysterious death, thinking that she fed him to the crocodile as well. But as it turns out, it was just an accident, although it did eat him. She didn't call the cops because she knew that they would hunt it down and kill it. To her, this crocodile's like a pet, something she's taken care of for the past 6 years. Back to Hector, who wants to get a close look at it, confident that it won't hurt him. But are you sure about that, Hector?
You sure about that? You sure about that?
Here we see just how truly huge this thing is. Also, just let me point out that this isn't CGI, but a mechanical prop in the water. Kudos to the crew. Anyway, this is enough to make even Hector poo his pants a little. But lucky for him, the crocodile just ate that cow, so it's not hungry. Still, you better get out of the water pretty quickly. Using a life raft, he makes it back to the chopper. The croc grabs on, but after a bit of a fight, they manage to get loose and are free. Lesson learned, Hector's not going back in the water ever again. At this point, Jack calls in Florida Fish and Wildlife to handle this. They are a bit more suited for the job, but Hector and Kelly know that they'll just kill it. And even though this thing is a monster, it's still a miracle, and they can't just end its life. Eventually, they wear down Jack enough to give it a shot, but they're gonna need some bait to lure it in. What could they use? Well, they dip this poor cow in and out of the water like a tea bag all day, and at night, still nothing. That helicopter must have unlimited gas. Jack's just about to call it quits when Hector gets a blip on his radar. Finally, it's coming.
He's coming.
The giant monster attacks, lunging out of the water, giving Jack his chance to hit it with a tranq dart. He's successful, but it's gonna take a while for the drugs to take effect. Hector loses control of the chopper and plummets into the water. Everything's quiet for a minute until Hank's attacked. He runs back to the truck and they peel off, but then Kelly falls out. They all open fire on it, now with real bullets, but that only distracts it. Kelly's in the water now, and the croc goes after her. She hides out behind a tree, but then gets her foot stuck. To make matters worse, the croc spots her and goes in for the kill. Luckily, that tree was there, and she manages to get to the surface and onto Hector's plane. But they're not safe there. The killer croc tries to get him, getting stuck in the process. Hector and Kelly make it to land, and they know this is it. They captured it. We won. But Jack needs to make sure. After all that, and now they finally have it where they want it. But Jack wants to kill it. He raises the gun and fires. A tranq dart. Oh, that Jack, he's such a kidder. They're not done yet because there's another one. The perfect opportunity for the sheriff to test out his new gun, which admittingly does a pretty good job. Frenemies Hank and Hector make up, Jack and Kelly hook up, and the croc is loaded onto a flatbed to be taken to a zoo or something. Oh, and Betty White still isn't arrested for anything. That's some great police work.
Come on, get your supper.
The largest crocodile ever recorded was around 20 foot 3 inches. The one in Lake Placid's around 30 feet, so I guess it's possible. And also terrifying. Stan Winston did the practical effects for the creature, and they look great. They basically made a mechanical 30-foot crocodile that could sit in water. That's impressive. The CGI, however, is not. We're not talking Anaconda bad, but still you can tell. There's a lot of humor in the movie, and it never takes itself too seriously, which is nice. It's just a movie about a giant crocodile. There's really no need to look much deeper than that. Betty White is surprisingly foul-mouthed and a real highlight to see. The scenery's nice to look at, and the characters all work well together, with Bridget Fonda being a personal standout for me. She's pretty cute. At only an hour and 22 minutes, including the credits, this movie doesn't waste your time. Does Lake Placid still hold up? Well, yeah, I think so. I give it a solid 3 teabagging cows out of 4.
Sheriff, when friends or family say things, they tend not to register, so sometimes it helps to hear it from a total stranger. You're fat.